Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
You know, I was pretty annoyed at the Oilers for just letting the same exact script happen again in Game 6. And I was like, you know, Florida deserves this. Such a good team. They looked relentless, inevitable. Even if the Oilers were playing well, you were like, Florida breaks through at the exact moment they needed to. It's a bummer we don't get Game 7. And I was like, you did nothing to flip the script. You did nothing to bring out your best, which McDavid and Draisaitl kept saying we haven't seen yet. But then I remembered Corey Perry has now lost 5 of the last 6 Stanley Cup Finals, and that's just beautiful to me.
There are silver linings to everything.
What do you do? There are players who go their entire lives without making like 2 Stanley Cup Finals. This dude is a god-tier Stanley Cup Final team hunter. Like just out there picking the exact best loser to go join.
Well, he can't be that good because he didn't realize that he had forward Jeff Skinner on his team this year.
Was forward Jeff Skinner the issue or the goalie Skinner the issue?
Why not both?
It's definitely both. I'm pretty sure the year that, like the 6th year in there, he lost to the Leafs.
Was that their first playoff series win in like 15 years too?
Must have been something
Historic.
Like
Everything about the stat line is historic.
With absolutely no condolences from Detroit Red Wings fans to Corey Perry. Condolences to the Edmonton Oilers, but once again,
I don't feel bad.
Nah, we always talk about it. It's like, who are you cheering for in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Neither team. We want
a meteor.
for them to change the rules and the Red Wings are in here. What do you mean? We don't want anyone to win. Florida deserved it. Anyhow, we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about the Red Wings, the draft, and a lot else, because this is our last episode before the 2025 NHL entry draft preview episode, which is always one of our biggest of the year. So it is now kicking into high season for us. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to be talking about some Red Wings forward discussion, starting with Patrick Kane, and then jumping over to what Detroit's depth forwards could look like in the future. We talk a lot about the big names, but what about the supporting part of the cast, which was bad last year offensively? We're going to get into a Stanley Cup final recap, some league news, a prospect profile, and more on the draft before we jump into overtime. Very quickly, though, this show is primarily brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We answer any questions and comments that didn't make the main show. We let loose. We have fun. Evan tells stories. We usually get bloopers, which are often from Evan. We get thoughts with Evan. Pretty much you just see a side of Evan that no one, including his family, sees. It's a really good time. And it's definitely a different tone, but it's really, we enjoy doing it. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game in season, going directly to our Patreon supporters. And in the off season, we have a lot planned. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to join the Dub Club. Patrick Kane. The reason I'm bringing up Patrick Kane is because for some reason, his name has come up all around Toronto Maple Leafs roster projections. And I have no problem with that. This isn't a, hey, hands off our forward kind of thing. Like Patrick Kane is an unrestricted free agent. Nothing's been signed yet, despite the fact that both he and Steve Yzerman have expressed public interest in finding an agreement, which doesn't happen for Kane or Yzerman often. So that feels like it's 80% of the way there. But his name has come up in Leafs roster projections. And to me, that was funny because Patrick Kane has been a revelation for the Red Wings forwards, proved everyone wrong in terms of what he can do coming back from hip resurfacing, and has brought value to this team that isn't just, the points that he's put on the board. But if the Leafs are trying to recreate Marner, either in a single player or in the aggregate, you're going to have a bad time if you're going to Patrick Kane. With no disrespect to him, but Patrick Kane, it's not a good thing that he's in Detroit's top 6 and it's like a no-doubter, right? Like, in an ideal world, you have Patrick Kane in a third-line role with a talented center, but you're mostly deploying him on the power play. And I'm seeing the Leafs projections where he's in the top 6. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, we just watched the non-playoff Red Wings with him in the top 6, and he's not why they didn't make it, but that's more of you don't have enough talent in a head to push him down the lineup. Am I crazy in thinking this way, or could it actually work there?
I mean, he's Patrick Kane. It could work anywhere depending on what you need from him and who he's playing with. You get him with a responsible defensive center like Marco Kasper, and he makes a lot of sense in the top 6 because you're not going to ask him to do anything he can't do. And we know acutely what he can't do or isn't willing to do. I don't know what it is, doesn't matter, but we know more importantly what he can do, which is provide lots of offense, even at his age, even post-surgery. So, like, I get it. Every team with any cap space, which is almost everybody, should have varying levels of interest in Patrick Kane. I just love the thought of Leaf fans getting their hopes up for something and Detroit being the ones to crush it.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down that path lest we jinx ourselves.
Yeah, if it does happen, then we just crawl in the hole and continue living our miserable existence, but
just delete the episode. We were never here. You can never prove it. That's a cardboard cutout of Evan. Has been for the last 3 episodes.
Yes, exactly.
This is your witching hour. Like, bright and early is your time. Why do you look like you...
Oh, I had to stay up past my bedtime last night to watch the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, yeah. That must have been devastating.
To watch the 2nd and 5th best players on the planet lose. The Florida Panthers.
What do you mean? Barkov and Bennett won.
I said 5th and 2nd, not 1st and 3rd. I don't understand. Okay, we've talked about it from a Toronto perspective, but why would Patrick Kane want to go to Toronto? That would be, if I'm Patrick Kane in this stage of my career and knowing what he sort of wants, kind of feels like the last place in the league other than Winnipeg or somewhere way out west that he would want to go.
Yeah, if you're Patrick Kane and you want to go to a good team to ring chase, you're not choosing the Buffalo of the good teams, Toronto Maple Leafs. You're choosing Florida, who probably won't be able to afford to keep Marchand. You go for less than Marchand, and then you're ring chasing there. He's settled in Detroit. His family, like his son and DeBrincat's son, like getting along and hanging out every game. Like, that's important to him. He's talked about how important it is that his family feels like they're at home. And he was in Chicago for so long. He didn't want to go. I think if Patrick Kane had the choice, he would have been a Chicago lifer and they would have just found a way to stay good. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. And if you asked him when he first started in Detroit whether it would go this well for him in terms of settling in, like, personally, I think he'd probably be surprised to know how well it went. Not because Detroit's not a great place to be or anything like that, but it's just hard as a journeyman in the NHL to find anywhere else to call home. But it really feels like that's what Kane and his family have found on and off the ice. Now, a big check from a team that's willing to do something silly or really wants his services or wants him to mentor the younger guys in the room, that could change anything. And that's why I'm qualifying all of this. He doesn't have an extension as of right now. But like every other negotiation that Patrick Kane has had, he has played it very close to the chest. When we had solid information that he was well on his way to re-signing, he still would never say so publicly because he wanted to have all the negotiating power he could have. And for him to come out and say, like, I'm interested in coming back, I think it shouldn't be hard to find a mutual agreement. And then for Yzerman to reciprocate that, like, those are two guys who are never going to give you a single inch in a negotiation. They're both like, yeah, we want to do this. So it's poised to be Patrick Kane returning to the top 6. And what you mentioned, Brad, like the parts of the game that Patrick Kane doesn't play, he's 36, 37. It's a pace thing. it's a defensive liability thing, and he's never going to win a puck battle. He's not really going to engage in puck battles, is probably a better way to put it. So, and that's just what it is. If you're a 25-year-old player in the top 6 in your athletic prime, those things are an issue. But you're Patrick Kane and you understand what he brings, and he's also generationally talented offensively, and the net benefit on the ice, it is a benefit. Like, you take Patrick Kane's warts because what he brings on and off the ice do outweigh it. And that's why he's a fixture of Detroit's top 6. Would he be a fixture of a much better team's top 6? No, probably not. He'd be in that role that I was talking about earlier. But as of now, like, imagining a world where Patrick Kane's not returning to Detroit, great. Now they have 2 big issues in their top 6, especially with the wingers. So
if he really wants to play in Toronto, the Red Wings could just sign John Tavares, and there's 2/3 of your third line.
Yeah, and then
imagine the foot speed on that line.
Can I not?
You don't have to think much because it's not moving very quickly.
Yeah, you can take a break and
you really see the plays develop.
Detroit has a speed issue, like a pace issue. And it would be something to go backwards in terms of that, but still get more talented, which is what Tavares would be.
Just bring in Jonathan Toews, him and Patrick Kane and John Tavares on the third line, just turning back the clock. Oh, man.
Well, they'd be trying to turn back the clock. Whether or not it actually feels like that would be another thing.
How many ambulances do they have at games by default? So 1 or 2? Because whatever it is, add 1 to that and just send 1 to the hospital after every game, no matter what. Not because of emergency, but just some guy will definitely need work because the collective age of that line would be 1,000. For me, like, Patrick Kane is just uniquely positioned for the Red Wings right now. And having him in that forward group is such a big add. And so when I say, like, Patrick Kane ideally is down the lineup, again, it's not a knock on him. It's actually a knock on the Red Wings. Like, you'd be able to mitigate any negative effects of Patrick Kane's game if you deployed him in more favorable minutes than they already do and just really fired him out there on the power play where he just changes the game for Detroit. I don't know that that's in the cards this year because they would have to add, 2 premium pieces up front to do so. So for now, it's worked out, but thank God for Marco Kasper, as you mentioned, Brad.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about talking about needing 2 top 6 forwards. I'm exhausted how often we've had to talk about first line left wing.
I assume if Nate Danielson makes the team and they sign a bona fide top 6 forward, that Nate Danielson would start on the third line. Patrick Kane would stay on the second line.
It depends on how Nate Danielson lands, I guess. Like, if he could play third line center, that'd be incredible. But I would imagine he'd more likely start as a wing.
Decent chance. And yeah, that DeBrincat, Kasper, Kane line worked.
Yeah.
Like, there's no complaints there. So I don't really think there's a good argument to break it up as it stands now. Again, 1 or 2 free agent signings changes that dynamic. But even if Danielson comes into camp and blows the doors off, I don't think he's taking Patrick Kane's spot. He's probably, maybe then, you're talking about third line center instead of third line wing, but I think that's probably where he's starting regardless if he makes a team.
Also, I don't think Patrick Kane came to Detroit to play with who's ever on Detroit's third line without it being like a certified elite third line.
Yeah, if even like when Andrew Kopp was working well as a second line center, it
takes a very certain type of centerman to play with Patrick Kane, right? Like, you need to be a honey badger, you need to have good foot speed, and you gotta complement the shortfalls he has now in his game at this time in his career.
And you have to amplify what he's able to do. Like, okay, you're a honey badger, you're good at retrievals, you can get him the puck, great. But then if he's dishing the puck,
he's gonna find you times where you think a puck should never be there.
And that's what makes DeBrincat so uniquely qualified to play with him, is because DeBrincat, even sometimes when we're like, oh, he's gripping the stick too tight or he missed the net wide, like I think of the first season, he's still able to fire those passes off into a shot like that on a dime. is probably asking a lot of other guys in the Red Wings. Anyways, I think as long as Patrick Kane is willing to come back and he's able to continue to adapt his game even as he ages, Detroit's just such a good fit, and Red Wings fans are largely thankful for the fact that he's there, because the forward group would be in such a worse spot without him.
Can you think of one team that would actually be a good fit for Patrick Kane?
Florida.
I don't think so, man. I don't think they play the type of game that Patrick Kane could play anymore.
No, that's a good point. They're pretty pacey.
They just play a total team game, and their power play is just disgusting the way it is. Like, I just feel like he'd get squeezed out there.
Edmonton. Could you imagine throwing him on that power play?
Yeah.
Edmonton's a long way from his hometown, but yeah.
Oh, I'm not saying he should want to do it, but I'm just saying if
you're
he
thinking
was willing.
team specifically, yeah.
Florida's it's like 20 Marco Kaspers.
Yes.
I would not be surprised if you put Bobrovsky in like a player setup that he would play like Marco Kasper. It just feels like all Marco Kaspers on that team. All right, that's Patrick Kane. We talk about the forwards too, and the depth issues on Detroit and the issues in the top six because they need someone else to fill in with Larkin and Raymond ideally. The depth, though, it just wasn't firing last year. There's a regression all the way to the other end of the spectrum last season, where like instead of scoring way more than they should have, they were just getting absolutely no scoring. And, you know, blame what you will on luck or shooting percentages or whatever. It's very obvious the makeup of the Red Wings depth forwards just wasn't right to contribute any kind of offensive help when the top six were shut down or went cold or needed support or anything like that. So what are the options for Detroit coming up this season? Because you can't win meaningfully without depth. Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, Kane, Kasper, and, you know, X being whoever they add, ideally. They're going to be injured. They're going to have cold streaks. They're going to get shut down. They're going to need to change the lines up. You're not going to do what Montreal or Ottawa did unless you get depth scoring this year. Are there targets in your mind? With the qualifier of like, okay, we've talked about, you know, Mason Marchment in the past. Mason Marchment would be a great depth forward. But based on Detroit's forward situation, he would be in their top six right now.
He would be their first line left winger, yeah. The two most obvious answers out of the gate, and I'll just, before we have the actual conversation, get this out of the way, Elmer Soderblom and Nate Danielson. If they can get any improvement internally, that's the best case scenario. If Soderblom can be that 15-ish goal guy who uses his body a little more effectively, fantastic. If Nate Danielson comes in and he is what we think he is, and he can hit the ground at least, I'm not going to say running, we'll call it jogging, so that he doesn't look out of place. That's a good sign. Then you got to look at the addition by subtraction, because, you know, with those two, then you still have Kopp, Comfer, Berggren, and you can go down the depth chart. Someone would have to go if you want to go poking around in free agency, because you can't go sign a free agent and healthy scratch him every night. I want to see some depth scoring. I know he's probably going to price his way out of Detroit, but Ryan Donato put up over 20 even strength goals on that version of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to find out what he can do in Detroit. Now, we've seen with as recently as Craig Smith, players come to Detroit with some optimism, and Detroit quickly proves they are not a place where...
They're like the inverse Florida Panthers, where they take these guys who are kind of on the bad teams and they turn into a superstar.
The Red Wings take the players who are on good teams or bad teams and just prove, oh, no, you can't even do that. Anything here.
Any player can be anything in the NHL. Just depends on your environment.
That's right.
Yeah. So I would like to see them tinker with some depth scoring. Not everybody has to be that 200-foot grinded out, you know, Florida Panthers type, call it that, in order to be successful. Beyond that, I joke, all those former Red Wings that are on the market.
I was going to say, man.
A few of them I actually would, like Gus Nyquist. I don't think he'll be that expensive given his age. I think he could be a good 35, 40-point third liner. I think Anthony Mantha is going to be dirt cheap because of the injury he's coming off of. And I'm not saying he's going to ever be what he was when he was going on those heaters with Larkin and Bertuzzi, but you put him on the third line, you know he's going to score 15 to 20 goals because that's the one thing he's good at. You know, you need speed. Athanasiou's out there, and given that he spent most of the year in the AHL, he'd probably come on a near league minimum deal.
Might even be able to get him on a two-way.
Yeah, honestly. Like, so I joke about those guys, but like that's not what you fully need to do in the bottom six, but that's the type of guy I'm looking for the bottom six. Because your 200-foot grit grinder defense guys, you have Kopp, Compher, Rasmussen. You don't need more of them. You don't. You have enough guys who can play sound defense and provide no offense. That is the last thing I am looking for in free agency right now.
Well, I mean, you can still get defense like Pius Suter, who I think Detroit.
I think he's priced himself out of Detroit. I think like he's probably a $5 million player now.
I am.
I know.
I'm so vindicated, man.
I know. I love Pius Suter, and he would be at the tippy top of my list.
How stupid that is to hear.
I know.
When we let him walk.
I know. Remember the thing I went on last episode about every time the Red Wings get a good depth player, they don't keep them? I digress.
Pius Suter, Robby Fabbri, I think is like, he could be a...
He's out there too.
Yeah, like I think like he could come back. Like he has roots. He was in Detroit forever. He has roots in Detroit. I think Fabbri could come back. That would be same as the other guys, inexpensive. It's a more recent fit. The guys in the room would love it. Just bring back Fabbri and Suter. And
How many times do you see players go back to their old teams, though?
Yeah, you're not wrong. It doesn't happen often, but can you think of a path for those guys where they're compelled to go elsewhere, where we're like, that's like so the Suter thing? Yeah, he's probably priced himself out of Detroit. Has Fabbri?
I mean, when you're that, I shouldn't say that type of player in the NHL, but when you're a third bottom six guy, I think every option is an option. Yeah. So is Detroit an option? Yeah, I think so for sure. But it feels like it's so rare you see a reunion of player and team in today's NHL. So would it be a good fit? Sure, why not? But I just don't know if I realistically see that happen.
Can we think of a recent example where a guy came back to a team he was away from a while? Yeah, Peter Mrazek.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's still very TBD.
Yeah. Depending how this goalie market thing plays out. With the free agents, so like, if you're the Red Wings and you kind of take what you have now and you quote unquote build the phantom roster out of the players who exist, who's the two players you're putting on the third line right now? I lean to Kopp and Soderblom. So then who's the offset to them? And then if you're looking at the fourth line, that's Rasmussen, Compher, and probably not Berggren. He doesn't fit that mold at all, but he's still under team control. And if there's no trades that present themselves.
RFA with arb rights. So
yeah, I don't know. This is tough for me because I think one of the huge benefits of seeing what Kopp did with DeBrincat and Kane is he can anchor two non-defensive forwards and make them respectable defensively. We know what he can't do offensively, but we did see what he can do defensively. So I think you could throw on the right wing with Soderblom and Kopp, a Mantha, a Nyquist, Donato, that Daniel Sprong role, and I think they could be all right. And then you get the depth scoring. I don't think they would be a plus defensive line, but I don't think they would be a disaster either.
And like defensively, any line with Daniel Sprong is disastrous because he's a black hole if there ever was.
But yeah, if you find a guy who can at least be competent with it, right?
Yeah.
And still provide offense, it's probably what Detroit should be looking for. Because again, we can look at how bad they were defensively and all these other things. You were being nice by insinuating some shooting percentages and some PDO. They didn't generate scoring chances. It wasn't bad luck. They were fully inept offensively once you got outside the top six. That can't happen. Now, is it going to be a perfect scenario where you can find a guy who can put up a bunch of points in the bottom six and also be really good defensively? No, because that's a top six forward. And they're going to get paid as such.
For the same reasons that Patrick Kane is a bona fide top six guy in Detroit, If you find someone who's doing that, congratulations, you're promoted. And now we have the same issue in the bottom six.
No, exactly. So, like, you're going to have to make concessions somewhere. And I'm very much in this guy needs to be able to put up offense. I don't care if he's a shooter or a playmaker. Don't care. Someone who can produce offense. And then, all of a sudden, if you're trotting out Rasmussen, Comfer, and let's say, hypothetically, you bring back Tyler Mott or someone like that.
Dear God, no.
I'm just saying, someone like that, that's a perfectly good fourth line in the NHL that can play your shutdown role, that can take on big defensive minutes, however you want to classify that line. That's fine. I don't think you need goal scorers on the fourth line. Just enough that they can generate a little bit of offense, which I don't think Comfort and Rasmussen are going to finish a lot of plays, but they can run a cycle. They can shift the ice on some shifts when they need to. Again, they're not going to finish any of them. But then all of a sudden, if you got three lines that can go out there and bring legitimate offense, well, you're not worried about if your fourth line can score then. And that's the problem is the Red Wings had 2 fourth lines last year. Neither of them could score. They were both okay defensively. Every once in a while, yeah, they could flip the ice and run an ozone cycle that they didn't score on. And that's...
They tried their best.
That's fine, though. But like from a fourth line, that's fine. I don't even say that to be mean.
Fourth lines, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is the Red Wings had 2 of those last year, and that just cannot be the formula this year. And the answer might be Soderblom, Kopp, Danielson. That could be the answer if Danielson has a great camp.
Mazer, if he's healthy and can contribute.
Absolutely. But you don't know that until September, and I'm not willing to make that bet. So I'm still looking for that free agent or that guy in trade that could be that guy.
You guys can fill in the blanks on my knowledge about this player, but while we were talking, I was looking up potential guys, and a guy like Victor Olofsson's coming off a contract where, he's making $1 million, Claude Lemieux's his agent, and he can really rip the puck. I think, what did I see? He scored 28 goals one year. He had a 20, and last year he was over a half a point per game player on Vegas. So that's a team who's not relying on him for offense. He could be a depth option for a reasonable contract.
I like that option because he can rip a puck. He would be a weapon on the power play, which is where I'm pretty sure 27 of those 28 goals came from. He is not a plus player at 5-on-5. He is...
So he'd fit in well in the bottom 6.
If you want Patrick Kane in the bottom 6, but like a lesser version of him, that's basically what this guy would be. I'd be willing to take the risk to find out. Defensively, well, we would hope for competent. I don't think he's quite there.
Well, if he's playing with 2 other guys who are devoid of offense and could potentially fill in the gaps.
No, you put him with Pius Suter.
Genuinely, the concern I would have with Victor Olofsson, if that third line is, again, I'm going with Kopp and Soderblom. You can pick whatever winger you want. I don't know who's feeding Olofsson the puck there. I wouldn't call Kopp a bad playmaker. I think his puck distribution's better than he gets credit for.
Got better in McLellan.
But I wouldn't call it above average. And I think a guy like Victor Olofsson needs someone who can feed him the puck because he's a shooter through and through, and he's an elite shooter.
13.5% on his career.
Yeah, he is an elite shooter.
6 of his 15 goals last season were on the power play.
Yeah, but he doesn't bring much else in terms of plus skills. So it's, that give and take. Again, I'm willing to find out. This is, Evan, you're on the right track. This is the type of guy you should be looking at because he's young enough, too, that there's some runway there, which is a bonus. But he wouldn't be at the top of the list, but he wouldn't be very far down it either.
I think if, like what Evan said, I kind of agree. I don't know about that specific player in the fit. It's hard when you get into the depth guys. Like anyone who pretends to know what the fit will be is lying. That's just not the way the NHL works. We were talking about Craig Smith and Tyler Mott and what they were able to do on other teams. And in Detroit, they just kind of just disappeared. Craig Smith was here for a blank, right? But the thesis is there, right? You get a guy who's very defensively capable. Not every player in the bottom 6, as Brad was saying, needs to be this defensive weapon who then is devoid of offense. So if you have, I'm not even making a joke here, but Pius Suter or whatever, someone who is responsible in their own zone. Let's say someone who's as good as Pius Suter defensively, but can't score as effectively as Pius Suter, well, then you can maybe
Andrew
afford.
Copp. I feel
Andrew Copp,
you just described Andrew Copp.
no, but here's the thing. I think Andrew Copp is more likely than not to be continuing, health, provided, as Detroit's top 6 option, because that was working before his shoulder went down in that Minnesota scrum. Like,
if they don't find someone, he probably is the best bet to go fill in with Larkin and Raymond. And yes, I know everybody flinched when I said that. I did too, but
it was going well before he went
Yeah.
down. So there's, I'm not guaranteeing that happens again. That could have been a flash in the pan, but you have to give the guy credit. When McLellan came in, things did turn around the way he was saying they would turn around. He said, once you open up the game and the system and they're not being held back, which he felt like was happening under Lalonde, it would turn around, and that's what it did. So I don't hate a version of the Red Wings where, yes, they add other offensive talent, but let's say they miss out on all the big names, but just a healthy Copp, and then you can move things around. Kasper can flip to a wing, maybe, whatever it might look like. It's not the end of the world, but that has to come with the depth forwards. It's not ideal. I'd rather add Ehlers or something, but
if you strike out on every big name forward, then screw it. You might as well pay Pius Suter. But that's if things are going poorly.
The temple of Suter has never had a bigger day since the first time he scored a Pius Suter goal for the Red Wings. Oh man! But this is what I'm saying. I think the ability to add in those guys where it's a little speculative of what they can bring defensively to the Red Wings depth, you have the runway to do that because they have the pieces. And to tie this all together, I think Brad's first point is still the most salient here, which is Detroit internally, improvement of players that they already have. Who knows? There could be a miracle in the offseason and Berggren just completely makes a transformational step as a player and solidifies himself a roster spot. But Danielson making the team, MBN as a long shot to make the team. But if he makes the team, boy, does that fill in what the Red Wings need right now in every facet. You have improvement further from Soderblom. You have a healthy Carter Mazur, maybe. You don't have to transform everything in terms of trading away guys and signing 100 guys. It could be a few moves that you tinker with and everything else that happens internally. So it's not like the Red Wings aren't despondent. They're not, shit out of luck, down shit's creek without a paddle, nothing like that. They have all the capability, and unlike the top 6, it doesn't even feel like there has to be a big move from Steve Yzerman to fix this. So that's the silver lining here. It's that, it got a lot worse last season, but it can get a lot better without a lot of intervention in my mind. So no pressure to all the guys that I named there, but it all rests on your shoulders until Pius Suter comes in and saves the day.
Well, I still think the Red Wings need a elite borderline superstar level talent.
Yeah, but that's not in their depth. That's in the front of the lineup.
So you're putting Pius Suter on the first line then?
No, second line on the depth chart, but he'll get first line minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll just spread the minutes out a little bit better.
I need to get a Pius Suter jersey. The same way Brad really needs Detroit to trade for Erik Karlsson retained for cheap, and we'll get him a Karlsson jersey. I'll get a Pius Suter jersey. And Evan will remain jerseyless because of the trauma from when you were supposed to get the signed Steve Ott jersey, and then he got traded for, what was it, a 6?
It's a kiss of death if I confirm that I will get one of your jerseys.
That's some of the old podcast lore. Oh, man. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we're back, we're going to come back at you with Stanley Cup final recap, NHL news, and more. Back after this. Hockey offseason means summer, and summer means longer days, vacations, and somehow still way less time to cook anything decent. Between travel, barbecues, the draft, recording, you're lucky to have time for a coffee, let alone a proper meal. That's where Tempo steps in. It's been clutch for us, helping us to stay on track without living off frozen pizza. You get single-serve meals that actually taste like food, not cardboard. We've tried a bunch, but the tomato Asiago chicken and the apricot glazed chicken and rice absolutely hit the spot and are instant favorites, top of the board for us. Somehow they were that good while being done in just 3 minutes, which is about how much time Florida needed to win the series. Tempo keeps things simple. They've got over 20 options updated every week, and everything is made with real ingredients. No mystery meat, no prep, no guilt. You just heat it up, eat, and move on with your day. Perfect for when your calendar's slammed or when you're too tired to cook but still want something that doesn't derail your nutrition. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. All right, if you're like us and coffee's basically the fuel that keeps you going, whether it's early morning podcasts, late night game rewatches, or just grinding through another rebuild, then you need to check out Coffee Cult. These guys are serious about coffee. They only use specialty-grade Arabica beans from all over the world, and they actually work with their farmers to make sure every single bean is top quality. No joke, they inspect each one, and they won't roast anything that isn't excellent. The result is super flavorful and honestly superstar-level coffee. And get this, they roast to order. So when you place your order at coffeecult.com, your coffee isn't sitting on a shelf somewhere, it's roasted fresh just for you, and then it's shipped out. That's as fresh as it gets. Their dark roast is a go-to. Smooth, heavy-bodied with notes of caramel and chocolate, perfect for cold mornings at the rink. Or try something a little different like the Sumatra with chocolate and brown sugar vibes. And they've got a killer lineup of single-origin coffees from places like Colombia, Kenya, Brazil, you name it. Head to coffeecult.com, that's KOFFEEKULT.com, and use code WWP to get 15% off. And if you spend over $49, shipping is free in the US. That's coffeecult.com, spelled with a K. Drink better coffee. I'm not sorry to go back to Corey Perry, but just looking at this is insane. 2020 with Dallas loses to Tampa Bay. 2021 with Montreal loses to Tampa Bay. 2022, he joins Tampa Bay. He loses. 2023, he loses with Tampa Bay in the first round to the Maple Leafs, which is honestly rarer than losing in the Cup Finals for most people. 2024 and 2025 loses with Edmonton in the finals. That is, we were joking and said that's like the first half of the Marian Hossa curse, but it's now the Corey Perry curse.
And somewhere in there, he got kicked off the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, he almost broke free of the curse by just getting as far away as possible
from the Stanley Cup Finals.
And then brought himself back. That's a special run, folks. That's a special run. And hey, you know what? Red Wings fans, they're smiling like Jim from The Office right now. Stanley Cup Finals, Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. We said at the top of the show, it seemed inevitable the entire series. There's maybe 1.5 games where it looked like the script was flipped. Edmonton did not have it, but how much of that was just Florida's just too perfect of a playoff team as they're built with Bill Zito's vision and Paul Maurice's coaching there.
Where's the flaw on this team? They might be the best team in the Cap era. They have depth on every line. They have 3 arguably first-line caliber lines. Their defense, top to bottom, is solid. Bobrovsky's an excellent goalie. Paul Maurice is a great coach. They have the perfect culture in their room of accountability and effort, but also, I think Mikkola had a line where he's like, I'm allowed to be myself here. So it's not like you have to be a bunch of hockey-playing robots. Hell, Brad Marchand is there. And above all that, they have the intangibles on the ice as well, where they will piss you off, get in your face, fight you, scrap you, get under your skin, score on the power play. Like, I think Edmonton's going to get ripped apart after this series, and in some ways, very justifiably so. But I don't even think Edmonton was that bad or that much to blame for losing this series. I think Florida's just that good. Like, I think Florida's so good that this is going to be one of those years where NHL GMs around the league take the wrong lesson from this. They're going to look at Florida and go, wow, look at every one of their players was gritty, could grind it out, could fight, could piss you off, and then ignore the fact, oh, that's not why they won. They won because they have like 9 all-star level players, and their depth players are also really damn good.
I don't think that's a common misconception anymore, though. Like, I think the book is out on the Florida Panthers. The problem is the book is unattainable. You can't just copy it over. Like, everyone would love to have a Barkov, but where are you going to find a Barkov? Everyone would love to have a Matthew Tkachuk. Where are you going to find a Matthew Tkachuk? And the kicker is those 2 guys weren't even like one of the 3 or 4 best players for the team. Matthew Tkachuk playing with all the groin issues, the torn muscle, the hernia, like I have a tiny hernia right now and a sports hernia on top of this, and I don't let anyone walk past me without hearing about it. And this dude is going and scoring multi-goal games in the Cup Finals. And they weren't even second on the Conn Smythe voting. I didn't even look. I'm assuming Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett won it. Like, yeah, you'd want that team, but I think everyone knows, Brad, that they're skilled.
I think the good GMs know that. I think there's like maybe 8 good GMs in the NHL, so it's going to create an interesting offseason.
I think every year there's about a dozen good GMs. That's where I think, like, actually good, like above average.
Being generous, I could probably get to that number, yeah.
How many players on the Florida Panthers have 10 or more points in the playoffs?
I think they said on the broadcast last night there was 9 players.
11.
I was going to say all of them, so.
Nate Schmidt had 12 points.
Wasn't there something like the Florida Panthers defense had like 16 goals in the playoffs?
Well, okay, yeah, Nate Schmidt, 3 goals, 9 assists. Aaron Ekblad, 4 goals, 9 assists. Seth Jones, 4 goals, 5 assists. Seth Jones, who they found the best version of Seth Jones since like the initial phases of his career over there. Like, that team can turn anything into gold. It's alchemy over there. It's a mixture of like they had the great players in there. Like, it's not like anyone was bad off of the Panthers. No, they have Reinhart, they have Barkov, they have Bobrovsky, and talk about that contract being worth it. And they're formulated, the way they play, like Brad said, is specifically meant for that Cup Finals. It's kind of hilarious that the Leafs gave them the biggest test so far.
Run it back.
I'm sure the Leafs will have a normal response to that.
That is the most Leafs thing to happen. Like, the year where they are actually forced to finally blow it up, which is probably a few years too late in terms of blowing it up, is the year where they actually probably were the second or third best team in the playoffs. Like, that is just such a kick between the pants. Sam Bennett winning the Conn Smythe. I mean, Brad Marchand started to give it a good run there at the end, but Bennett led the league in playoff goal scoring, 15 goals, 7 assists. That dude was insane.
And I think they said 13 of the goals or 12 of the goals came on the road.
That's nutty.
That's insane. When you need a goal on the road to shut the home team up, shut the home crowd up, here comes Sam Bennett throwing elbows at your goalie and scoring goals.
True villain energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's one of the all-time non-superstar playoff performances, period, in NHL history. And then you talk about what Brad Marchand did going over there. Like, Brad Marchand either stays on Florida and probably gets another crack or two at winning the Cup, or he just made himself an extra couple $1 million per year on his next contract over there. Like, if Brad Marchand doesn't make that move to Florida, he's getting a decent amount of free agency, but not this. And now people are saying $8 million is not going to do it for Brad Marchand. That's insane considering where we were at in like February.
He's like 36, 37 years old. Like, I say this as very pro, hey, the Red Wings should be the guys to give him that money, but when he falls off that cliff, that contract's going to be a train wreck.
It's going to be an LTIR, Brad. It doesn't matter.
It's
the
like
cap's not real.
It's like signing a coach. You sign him for 5, you only have him for 4 or 3.
You know whose issue that contract is? The company that insures it.
Honestly, I think with what I've seen from Brad Marchand this year and throughout his career, we talk about the Patrick Kane intangibles of teaching Lucas Raymond and teaching some of the young guys and showing them how to be a pro. It might be worth it for Brad Marchand at this point.
Just to get him in the room. Everybody around him says, for as big of an a-hole as he is on the ice, they say he's the most positive, upbeat guy in every room that he walks into.
Well, I saw a lot of mid-20-year-olds on Edmonton give terrible efforts in comparison to Brad Marchand. So talk about winding the clock back. Like, he was incredible in these playoffs. Maybe the best trade deadline trade I've ever seen.
Like, you're not wrong. He is a league-wide top-tier culture guy. Not to sound like an old hockey head here. Talk about Edmonton. We were saying last night, Evan, in the chat, I don't think it's crazy to say Edmonton needs to blow some things up. I'm not saying you jettison something stupid like McDavid, Draisaitl. That's not what I'm saying. But you can't keep trying this with the goaltending you have. you don't have the horses on defense to actually defend. You don't have the team defending structure to actually defend so that you can have an average or even below average goalie. This isn't Colorado when they won. You need a goalie that can make a consistent save. Even if the peaks are lower than when Skinner just went absolutely ballistic and nuclear for those few games in a row, you can't have, one, that many valleys, and two, the valleys cannot be that deep or that long. Like, you need a consistent save. You are never going to play 16 games of game-winning NHL hockey in the playoffs, but you still need to win 16 times. And sometimes you need the goalie to bail you out for a period or two, or for an entire game sometimes. Skinner did that occasionally, but he lost them a lot more, in my mind. Or at the very least, when the rest of the team was failing in front of him, he did nothing. Like, a puck goes in yesterday off his glove. That stupid blocker rebound that he put out there last night. It's a shame because I think he's a fine goalie in the NHL, but the Edmonton Oilers are committing hockey crimes by wasting the primes of McDavid and Draisaitl and not just getting a goalie. Goalie isn't their biggest issue. I think maybe tied with like team defending, whether it's actual defensemen or their structure, but it's one of the biggest issues, and it's one position. Do whatever you need to do and solve it, because you have something almost no one else has, which is two game breakers, which according to Evan are the 7th and 8th best players in the world. I personally have them like 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 in McDavid and Draisaitl.
How many points did McDavid have in the finals?
Irrelevant.
5 or 6. Like, it was a lot.
How'd that work out? Oh, the same number of games it took Florida to win the series.
Yeah.
Which I correctly predicted, by the way.
Oh my God, he was right.
Oh my God, he picked the best team in the league doing the Stanley Cup.
What were you two idiots doing?
Hoping
Being
for happiness. Fun.
Betting on Corey Perry like a dumbass. That's what I was doing, Evan.
It was all there for you.
You know, I'm usually pretty decent with the brackets. This was my worst bracket year ever, so I don't want to talk about it. What do you want from us?
I haven't looked at mine, but I'm pretty sure I had Tampa and Dallas in the final. Something stupid.
Just look up PK Subban's and you'll feel a lot better about yours. I think he got almost every single series wrong.
Tell you what, I actually had a beer that was named after you just down the road here, and it was really good. We thought it was a darker beer too. I'll bring you a couple cans of it or something that's your gift for being right.
Okay.
Then you shut up about it. Go on.
Anyways, goaltending is the Oilers' biggest issue. I was reading a stat yesterday that was basically, it took the last 10 years of the NHL playoffs and ranked like individual goalies' save percentage of who've played at least 10 games in a playoff run. 147 goalies qualified. Like, now that, keep in mind, like Stuart Skinner, who's had 5 runs, would count 5 times towards that 147. Between Stuart Skinner's 3-4 runs and Calvin Pickard's 1, I think the highest any of them ranked was like 141st. Like, shockingly bad every single time they're given the opportunity. They can't run it. Both goalies need to go. Can't even keep him around as a backup. You need to go out there and get a John Gibson or whoever. I don't even know any other good goalies that are available. So, like I said, I don't know what goalie's available. That's step number 1.
Go trade. I don't care if it's Gibson or you have to get some. Okay, I'm not saying Talbot would have won them the cup, but someone even steadier as another option to Skinner at like Talbot probably would have got them to game 7, maybe.
He would have been better. He would have been a lot better than what they got.
Yeah.
And it's a gigantic problem. Their other big problem I think they have right now, and it's totally unfair to put it on him considering he's only been there for like a year and a half, coaching. You talk about team defense, they've got good defensemen. I'm not worried about the talent on their blue line. It's how it's used. And we were talking about it before. McDavid, I think, is pissed at the coach. That quote he had after the game last night where he was saying, he's like, we kept trying the same things over and over again. We're just banging our heads against the wall or something like that. That's a direct shot at the coach.
Didn't they bring in Knobloch because he had some affiliation to McDavid when he was in the juniors?
Yeah.
And
DeBrincat too.
I don't know. I think, man, well, hey, if there's a man out there who can fix this team, though, it's Stan Bowman. Am I right?
Oh, that's the whole thing. And from hearing what some Edmonton fans and pundits believe, they think Stan Bowman can do it because he air quotes for the people listening in their car, built championship level teams. And I think that's very much out for debate.
I mean, the draft lottery built them some championship level teams in my mind. But
Hey, same with Edmonton.
Well, no, but they aren't a championship
That's
team.
true.
Western Conference champions. You just got to put the details in there.
Ooh, they'll have a fun banner raising ceremony.
Should do it against Nashville. Stan Bowman was asked, I think, this trade deadline, are you trading for a goalie? He just outright said no. Maybe you were lying and maybe you were trying. Pretty tough look now. Like, Florida is a complete team. They looked unbeatable. They were the Thanos this year. Like, they seemed every single time they played, inevitably Edmonton would be down 2 or 3-0 after the first. But I still think, despite it being like ugly and messy and not traditional the same way Florida won it, Edmonton could have won this if they just got a save. Bobrovsky doesn't need to play like a $10 million goalie. Sometimes he does, but oftentimes he doesn't get a lot of work and just makes the saves he needs to.
I would say at the start of that, when this contract was signed, everyone was like jaws on the floor, and he wasn't all that great for a long stretch of the start of that contract. Like, they used Alex Lyon to get them into the playoffs because they couldn't trust their $10 million goalie to pull his weight. And now nobody cares.
And they figured out what to do with him. He's not going to, you shouldn't be playing him 55, 60 games. Get him the rest and make sure that he, like, a lot of goalies want the rhythm. He wants the rest. And then he makes the save. If he's playing like a $7 million goalie that night, that's fine because the team is built for that. And that's okay if he's letting in 1 or 2. But how many times has Florida been, like, it's not like they dominated every second of the series. Like, Edmonton at points was all over them. But Bobrovsky just made the saves look routine. When Florida, it was like the first time they got a fast break, boom, turn around, shorthanded goal, power play goal, and never really did the goalie bail them out this series. I have problems with how their defensive structure is. Like, Evan Bouchard gets a lot of grief. And defending, yeah, he's not exactly a complete defenseman, to say the least. But how often is the Darnell Nurse conversation happening? And it's not just because people are being unfair to Darnell Nurse. He's being paid out the nose for something he's not doing. Their whole defense is built on like hopes and dreams. And then you have guys playing bigger minutes than you want them to be playing. And I'm a hypocrite here because I was talking about how Stetcher and Wallman and these guys did something for the Oilers these playoffs. But ideally, you don't have Wallman getting danced around by Brad Marchand and then probably injured but still kind of ugly to watch Ekholm getting danced around by Reinhart the very next game the same way. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it's an easier fix, though it's a big task to just fix the goalie rather than fix all those defensive issues, because that's a huge turnaround.
Those guys get walked, your goaltender makes a big save, nobody talks about it ever again.
Yeah. And is that the model for every team? No, but not every team has McDavid and Draisaitl. But how many wasted opportunities do the Oilers have now?
Maybe only one more.
No, he's extending. There's no way he's not. If nothing else, it's his bestie Draisaitl's extended there. Like, he's not going to pull it. He got
the heated driveway. We cannot be having this conversation. If you get a heated driveway, that is your forever home. He is re-signing in Edmonton. Doesn't matter about the hockey.
I could not ever agree with you more, Evan. You know who I feel bad for is the Oilers fans who I've never seen a fan base fight themselves, like literally fans fighting other Oilers fans fighting each other at every single game these playoffs. I'm like, man, the Oilers is really all they have over there.
Wait, you mean a bunch of drunken, irrational fights in the province of Alberta?
No,
never.
So I don't know, man. Like the lessons to take away here. I know we talk about a copycat league and, you know, GMs learning the wrong lesson. I don't think trying to copy the Florida Panthers is a bad move, because I think who they're actually made up of is a team of skill guys who play two ways, understanding that not every player can be a superstar, not every player can be like Probert in his era, but guys are doing a little bit of both. A goalie who's doing it right, you know, efficient depth signings. Like, the Panthers, you know, hate to watch it because they're annoying as hell, are the model franchise in terms of how they're constructed.
Well, you just about nailed the point there. Not every player can be a star level player. You need about half to 2/3 of the roster to be a star level player, which is what the Panthers are.
They also took Gustav Forsling, who was given up on by 2 teams and acquired him through waivers. And he's become one of the best defensemen in the league.
They said that on the broadcast last night. They're trying to, Edmonton, even though they don't have last change, they're trying to get McDavid and Draisaitl away from Forsling. I'm like, this dude was on waivers.
You imagine saying that 3 years ago? It'd be like, is this a preseason game? What is going on?
Can you imagine? That's they're trying to get Gretzky and Messier away from Forsling. That's nuts. What a turnaround for that guy.
Incredible.
Well, that's it for the Cup. Early predictions for next year?
Florida,
Edmonton again in the finals.
Not even to be funny. Yep.
Florida in 5. Just progressively.
Yeah, they're just improving their high score. This one was very much almost like a no-doubter.
Oh, yeah.
After they got through Toronto, it was just I think everyone agreed that was the best team and they won handedly.
The big takeaway from this whole season, I don't remember which game it was, but the Red Wings beat the Panthers in the regular season, which means we're almost there.
Yeah.
Run it back.
Just don't look at every Red Wings Panthers game in the regular season, but there was one.
We should have a swear jar for when Evan says run it back, ironically. Oh, I wasn't being ironic there. I said the next part for you.
Okay, thank you.
More NHL news. A little flash in the pan that was kind of rescinded after, but it was reported that Troy Terry may be available from Anaheim.
Yes, please.
You're all over that, right? If he's actually available. And the idea is
a 65-point player who is making $7 million a year. Yes, please.
If Anaheim wants to pay Marner, they're going to have to get that money from somewhere.
We'll take Terry and Gibson. There's your cap space for him. Thank you, Anaheim.
I actually love that, Brad. I love that.
That would be almost exactly the money that Marner's going to be making.
He's signed through 2030, and he'll be 32 years old. So those are his best years you're getting at $7 million per year, which with the cap going up is effectively nothing in my mind anymore. It doesn't even count. So yeah, I would take it. You would have to pay a pretty penny. But if you're Anaheim, you're okay, we have to pay for California taxes if we're trying to convince Marner to come here over, say, Vegas. So ostensibly they have to pay more. They'll need the cap room. I'm bringing Terry in.
You don't think every other team is also thinking that?
Yeah, but there's a connection there with Pat Verbeek and Steve Yzerman, and not every team's going to want to bring in Gibson as well. So.
I think Detroit could be the one team that could do both. Plus, for the sake of our podcast, getting a Terry.
The Terry jokes would be great.
On the roster.
Talk about deep lore of the Winged Wheel podcast. The Terry jokes go ways back.
We always talked about Terry coming back one day.
Oh, no, we lost Terry. What would the price be? Because that's a cost-controlled player who produces.
Oh, it would be a lot. 13 overall, and then probably one of your better prospects.
Yeah, but wait, are we talking Terry only or also Gibson?
No, let's throw Gibson in there as well. Let's get
because I think that brings it back the other way. Gibson is okay. He's not John Gibson when Anaheim was completely terrible and was standing on his head for 7 straight years.
I think Gibson in a trade would have positive value still, but it wouldn't be premium value. You're not giving up a first for 2 years of John Gibson right now. And with his if you're taking the full cap hit, that probably boots it down even lower than a second. But I think the differentiator here would be taking on John Gibson would just be the value to get Troy Terry. That would be the tiebreaker where if Detroit and 5 other teams are offering the same value for Troy Terry, Anaheim would go, well, Detroit's taking Gibson at full pop. We're not even going to ask anything for Gibson, but they're just going to take him.
Yes.
Can you do that? And 4 other teams would go, no, we can't fit that.
Well, you guys just said the cap's not real, so other teams could do that.
They could, but they won't because they think the cap's real.
That's true because there's only 8 good GMs. So hopefully Anaheim's not talking to 7 other GMs.
I mean, those good GMs have probably spent more of their cap by now because they are building competitive teams.
Well, those are the GMs that might land Marner, so they're still worried about that.
And this is one of those unique situations where whenever there's a good player available from Buffalo or New York, you're okay, ignore division or whatever. They probably want him to go to the other conference, whoever they're trading away. Like if New York trades Lafreniere, they don't want to see him a bunch of times each year.
Well, yeah, if you're like Detroit, you'd probably be interested in helping Anaheim if you know that sends Mitch Marner out west, right?
That's a big Galaxy brand.
I
think
use
more than
help as very loosely, but if you know one of the teams is Carolina or once upon a time the Toronto Maple Leafs, then maybe that's extra incentive to push some talent out of your division.
I like the thinking, but I think NHL GMs are just like, I just need to get good players. I'm not thinking that many steps ahead. And Troy Terry would be a situation where it's like, yeah, Anaheim sends him out east and they don't have to see him a bunch of times. Because if you're trading away a good player like that, you know the risk. You don't want your fans to see how good he is up close and personal.
We just watched Mikko Rantanen just pull down Colorado's pants.
Publicly. Yeah. And he pointed and laughed, and everyone laughed with him.
And it was a very cold day.
They were in the pool. Anyhow, we'll see if Troy Terry is actually on the block, but if he is, man. And then we're going to get news of the CBA coming in here, and one thing that we may see is a playoff salary cap and what that looks like in terms of what you have to do to be compliant in terms of the guys you actually ice. I'm hoping it's enough to just put away the whole Tampa Bay, Vegas, whoever LTIR shenanigans and then make things a bit more fair so that teams aren't gaming injuries and just bringing guys back and loading up at the deadline. We'll see what actually comes up. I imagine the CBA will be announced sometime this summer. Okay, last prospect profile before we get into the actual full draft preview next episode. Let's do Jackson Smith. I've talked about him before, but Jackson Smith probably hasn't had enough attention from us and is honestly a player that's very well on the radar for Detroit. I think he's the most under talked about by this podcast player who is firmly within the range for Detroit to take him and would be a fit in my mind. So who's Jackson Smith as a prospect? Where is he on your would you draft him list, and how does he compare to the other defensemen in that range?
Well, he's right in the range. He's on my list. He's right around the Red Wings pick, maybe a spot or two behind. He's one of the more unique defensemen available in this area because the skill is high. Like this guy has just that dynamic element that a Mertka or a Reed just don't have. I don't even think Aitchison really has in terms of things he can do with the puck on his stick. His consistency is an issue. There's questions about the hockey IQ, but he's big. I think Wheeler just dropped his player comparables this morning, and he had Smith's comparable as Chychrun, which I don't hate. That kind of very toolsy defenseman, but is he gonna put it all together? Maybe, maybe not. But if he does, you have a hell of a player there. In the mid-first round, that's the type of talent I would like to take a bet on. It may work out, it may not, but if it does, he's a top 10 player all day. But obviously, because of the consistency and the hockey IQ questions, he's not going in the top 10 in all likelihood. So, I don't know. I really like the prospect. I think just when you're looking to take a swing, which players have that element that the guys around him are lacking? And for defense in this draft, he's got it. And I'm actually really curious because I could see a team falling in love with him around like 7 or 8. But because of the issues, I could see him falling past 15. Like the range of outcomes for him here is big.
I think, no pun intended, I think the fact that he's big and toolsy means I see him going higher, especially with the whole thing that I always repeat on the show, which is defensemen get drafted way higher than we project them. It's just how the NHL works. And not to say the NHL is wrong for doing it that way. And I agree, toolsy, but you have questions about the hockey IQ and can he put it together? But the potential is definitely there. I'm laughing because we're also advocating to trade for Keandre Miller. And we've compared everyone to Keandre Miller, it feels like, this draft. If you're going to trade for Keandre Miller and New York's asking price is like a first plus, well, then I'd rather just try to create Keandre Miller out of pick 13 here with one of the players available. I like a player who has that size. I like a player who has those tools, that offensive ability, and I mean, the defensive game can be rounded out at the pro level, and I don't see him as being like deficient by any means. So I don't mind the player. I had the same requisite questions, which is probably why I haven't talked about him a lot, of guys who haven't shown their ability to put it together, because you could create 17 potential all-star teams of guys who have all the tools in the world but could not put it together on the ice. And in the junior leagues and the CHL and leagues against, smaller guys where you can use your frame or your skating or your one-on-one skills, you can get away with not being able to put it all together with hockey IQ or whatever you want to call it. But when you get to the NHL, time and space disappears. The players you're playing against are the smartest in the world. Lanes disappear that you'll never see again. And that's where, the cream of the crop rises and everything else kind of gets washed away. So I'm not damning Jackson Smith to that, but that's why I also have the questions of like, is he going to be the toolsy guy that can put it together enough? Like I don't know if it's the perfect comparable, let's just say Chychrun, for example, or is he going to be the next, what could have been 6-7 defenseman that just becomes a journeyman and then eventually fades out of the league?
Brendan Smith.
Yeah, like who we're acutely familiar with.
I mean, Brendan Smith carved out one hell of a career given who he is.
Yeah, he also had to play forward there for a while, so I wouldn't say he was a successful defenseman.
Well, I think Jackson Smith is a way better defenseman from a defense perspective than Brendan Smith ever was or was at the time of being drafted. I would not be shocked to see Jackson Smith go in the top 10. Like he's big. He still has more room to grow. I think he's like 6'3", 190, 195. Like that's a big kid who can still put on more weight. He's a good skater and can move the puck and can play in all situations. Like those are the types of defensemen that just have 10+ year careers in the NHL. There's absolutely a chance he becomes a top pairing defenseman, and I think he's got all the fallback to be a top 4 guy. Like I just don't see him being a bottom pairing defenseman. Like he is. I think he'll be the second defenseman off the board.
Oh,
I really like his game.
You think over Mertka, Jackson Smith's going to go?
Yeah, like I like his overall game a little bit more. Like I think he's at a more subjectively, I think he's at a more NHL ready position, and teams are really going to like him. So I think more on the, if we're saying bottom 6 or Jacob Chychrun, the guy who just scored 30+ goals in the NHL, I think I'm more on that side than the other side. But I wouldn't say, he's absolutely going to be a 30-goal defenseman, but I really do like his game.
I don't disagree with your take on what his game can be. I think where I agree with Brad is the range of outcomes is big. I think he can be a nobody in the NHL, and I also think he can be like a potential top pair or even like a great second pair defenseman. I mean, left shot has the offensive ability, so like I love this for Detroit from pick 13. If they're pick 6, then I'm not talking Jackson Smith at all, to be completely transparent here. But pick 13, you can do a lot worse than Jackson Smith. So calling a guy toolsy is often seen as a pejorative, but I don't think that's a mistake or even an insult here. Like you get a toolsy guy and bank that he can put it together. Not every guy who can put it together shows extreme hockey IQ at that age. Sometimes it kind of gets revealed over time. It's not a perfect science. So, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record here and maybe a little bit like a fence sitter, but Jackson Smith is also in my bucket of be perfectly happy if they drafted him, because I could see the vision there.
So if you don't like any of the forwards available, how this draft goes, and you have basically only defensemen left. You've got Mertka, Smith, Aitchison, and I'll let you insert a forward, and it can't be Cole Reshny. Who are you taking?
Which forward, though?
I don't know.
It's your hypothetical.
Carter Bear.
Carter Bear. Yeah, that's a perfect one.
Wow, I now know how you feel when I put you on the spot. Mertka is what most people's answer would be, because everyone would be saying Mertka won't be there.
I'm saying in this scenario he is.
I lean towards Mertka, even though they don't need necessarily another right shot right now in the draft. I'm going to go with the cheap answer and go with Merca, but am I higher on Carter Bear than everyone else? Because I feel like that's also a pretty strong result for 13.
No, I think I got Bear at 13 or 14. He's right in range for me.
Yeah, I think if Merca's there in this scenario, I'm going Merca, and understanding that might be stupid because I fully see what you say, Evan, in terms of Jackson Smith could end up being the second best defenseman out of the lot. Where are you on that hypothetical, Brad?
Carter Bear.
Okay. Like
I think Merca's one spot higher on my list, but the Red Wings, the need for forward trumps the need for a right defenseman there when it's close.
Okay, let's put it this way. Aitchison, Jackson Smith, where are you at?
Jackson Smith.
How about you, Evan?
Yeah, me too.
Interesting. That's razor thin margins for me.
Okay, then let's say Merca Smith.
Merca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Merca.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll just...
You're a big Jackson Smith
Go find
guy.
a cold pool, I guess.
Thought you already did. All right. And on that note, we're going to take another quick break. When we're back, the final segment here on the Winged Wheel Podcast, back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the Discord, the giveaways. Evans, what did I say last time? Your phone number or your home address?
Probably both.
I made him switch that like 10 times by now. You get access to all of that and lots more, and you allow us to do everything that we do on this show. So thank you to all of our patrons. Let's take some questions from our patrons. This one is important. It's a comment from Grand Rapids Girly here. It says, reasons to hate the Panthers. Tired. They win too much. Wired. They didn't boo the commissioner as God intended. We forgot to bring that up.
Rescind their championship.
Vegas didn't boo Bettman either when they won, and that was a disgrace. I think they should have just folded their brand new franchise.
I agree.
You have to boo Gary Bettman. I don't care how you feel about him. It's not about hatred.
It's about tradition.
It's your duty as an NHL fan base. Also, like my old man yells at Cloud thing is those stupid scarves they've had with the cup winners the past few years. I think they started it with Vegas, which are just so obviously like a ham-fisted, some exec was like, oh, this is a great marketing opportunity.
I saw an EPL game once in my life and everyone had scarves. We should do this in hockey.
Yeah, this isn't European football. Like it's just a sponsorship thing. And this was the first year since they started it where most of the players weren't wearing it. I think the first player I saw wearing it during the cup raising ceremony was Bobrovsky. And I was like, good on you guys, because it's so stupid, has nothing to do with the tradition of hockey. And anytime it's like this is just an NBA type looking to create something that's not there, you can't force tradition. And stop. You don't need more sponsorship placement. It's already so cluttered.
The fans love it though.
Yeah.
We love the sponsorships, the advertisement.
Personally, I was pretty annoyed by all the people on the ice lifting the cup because I couldn't see the moving digital board ads. My favorite part of the
Agreed.
The Dandyman Can says, I didn't realize how big Jason Robertson is listed at. I don't actually watch him that much. Does he use his size in his play at all? If he's available, we need skill and size in the top 6, and it's hard to come by. Is he good enough where you'd send Kasper in the package the other way?
Probably not sending Kasper just because...
He's good enough where you have to consider it, but
Yeah.
you do have to pause because there's a time differential there, an age differential,
Yeah.
and when are you actually going to make most of those years?
And you still got a couple cheap years of Marco Kasper, whereas Robertson's already expensive and going to get very expensive soon. He is big. He uses his size well to like protect a puck. That's about it.
Yeah, he's not a physical, not Tom
No.
Wilson out there.
Not at all.
And which is forgivable because the dude can rip it. But yeah, he doesn't bang bodies, to say the least. All right. Will Bukima says, I know it'll be tough down 4-2, but as long as they have McDavid and Draisaitl, can we really count out the Oilers? I'm surprised we didn't see an interview from McDavid or Draisaitl saying, well, yeah, we haven't seen our best yet, so we think it's coming next game. And actual question, not to be too reactive, but what do you make of Knoblauch at this point? I'm not smart enough to know what more he could have done, but it felt like the attempted answers were limited and unsuccessful. Or is it less about coaching and more about how hard it is to build a team as complete as Florida?
The fact they kept going down so early every game really makes me wonder, because we had that issue with Lone in Detroit where they were just never ready to play. what we think doesn't matter. McDavid seemed pissed off with the lack of adjustments, so I think that's probably the most telling thing you're going to get.
You should talk to the captain of their team then.
Yeah. Well, he told him to dig in right now.
How deep are they?
Like, how many coaches could outcoach Paul Maurice on any given night? You'd only need one hand to count that.
Well, Paul Maurice has, we've already talked about on the episode, like he had every single talented player, every pawn and tool to use at his disposal.
That's the other point there, is like that it was just a more complete team. Was Edmonton ever going to beat that Florida team? Remains to be seen. Hard to know with the goaltending situation they had to say for sure. Yeah. But is Brad also right that they were unprepared? Yeah, I think so. And it stands to reason you could have a better coach, the team is more prepared, and they still lose in 7, you know?
The old adage of if you show me a good coach, I'll show you a good goalie. I think that's a big one there too.
Yeah. Jake Iatru says, are you guys for or against individual player goal songs? If they did have them, who do you think on the Wings would have the most ridiculous song? For, because Brendan Shanahan's my favorite player of all time, and I loved hearing the Irish jig.
Yeah, no, I'm in favor of it. Who would have the wildest one on the Red Wings?
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be Lucas Raymond.
No.
He's got that big little brother energy where he'd pick something because it's funny.
No, Lucas Raymond, him and Mo are closer to the Zoomer generation than they are to our generation.
That's
so I think
fair,
it's like whatever's popular now.
I would love to hear Bear Grylls because I'm almost certain he doesn't listen to music.
What?
I think he probably listens to music, but it's probably just like, maybe he's like a Swedish metal guy. That would actually rule. It would just sound ridiculous on arena speakers, but yeah, I don't know. None of those guys seem like completely out there personalities.
This is more a testament to the Red Wings need to embrace their inner Brad Marchand more.
Well, Brad Marchand's. Actually, you know what would have been pretty sweet if Brad Marchand, his goal song was shipping up to Boston just as like a callback. Maybe that's corny. That is why I get called old and corny. Their Canadian That's How says, what is the biggest swing Yzerman could take from the draft pool that will reasonably be there at 13? And should he do it if Merca or Aitchison are available? So assuming they're not the swing.
What? Reshney?
Yeah, I knew you'd say
Fucking
that.
swing? Cullen Potter?
Roger McQueen might still be there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's an automatic if he's there.
Depend who else.
I guess, yeah, the same thing you said when we profiled him, Evan, is like, why is he there? It's a good question. Kip Tira Jr. says, am I the only one under the impression Yzerman will never get fired from the Red Wings organization, let alone the GM spot? Kip, I think you're exactly right, and I think you're going to see Yzerman retire out of that role. I don't think he's ever getting fired.
He might be asked to retire.
Don't even think that. I think he's going out on his terms.
Well, I think this offseason's I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I don't think we've talked about it enough. I think this offseason's going to go a real long way to at least shaping how the fan base feels about him. If this is more of the same, I think we're going to see a big shift to the fan base.
And sentiment.
Yeah.
Fans were booing in games last year, multiple games.
But that was more so towards the players and shitty effort.
I don't think so. I think Yzerman's already getting a lot of heat.
That's the thing. He's getting a lot of heat, but if you the Athletic put out or Max put out his confidence poll, and like fans were pretty neutral. There was almost in most categories as much positive as there was negative. I think if we have another offseason like the last two, that's going to be very skewed to the negative.
It's going to be the first time since the Ken Holland era we're going to be negative. I still don't think that means Yzerman's not going out on his terms. I just don't see Ilitch doing that.
No, I think you're right, but I think the fan perception's more interesting because I don't think there's much of a conversation to be had there with Ilitch and him.
The 10th annual Winged Wheel Podcast Catalina Wine Mixer, an off-season content spectacular celebrating a decade of hair loss, and then it actually gets double truncated there. Hi, Joseph. They ask, theoretical trade, Robertson and Dumba for 13th, Soderblom and Kampf for half retained. Who says no?
Dumba's so bad.
I think Dallas says no there, right?
Yeah, because they can't take back Comfer.
There's too many years of too much money.
I think it's not enough for just Soderblom in 13th, but I think you're close actually there.
Being in a cap bind skews trade values so much, which kills me because I don't actually think it needs to. But if that Detroit can work that in their favor, absolutely. Rasmussen and Petrie on 2-0 breakaway says, do you want to take Dumba or Lyubushkin to drive down the asking price for Robertson?
Absolutely.
I don't disagree with Evan. Like, you're talking some bad hockey there. Absolutely still.
Oh, they're
I'd bury him in the minors.
Red Wings decor.
I would happily take them, eat the cap hit, and just bury him in the minors just to get the cost down.
Would that be enough to steer Dallas away from ASP, Kasper, or Danielson? Probably Kasper. I don't know that you can get away from all three, but I don't know. Like I could see a trade for Robertson that doesn't include those three. It would have to be 13th overall.
And you would have to be taking salary back.
Yeah.
But then I think your secondary pieces lighten up.
Cider, I barely know her, says, hypothetical scenario, would you consider trading back in the draft to get rid of Tarasenko's contract? And if so, how far? Throw Hall in there too as a garnish.
Long-term future is still more important. They do not need the cap space that desperately this year. Unless things go unbelievably right, where you're getting like 2 of Robertson and Ekblad, you do not, under any circumstances, if you're the Red Wings, mortgage long-term success to solve a 1-year problem.
Yeah, I as much as it sucks, I eat whatever is left on those contracts.
Yeah.
And I still want to trade them. Like Stevie.
Like if you're unloading them for like a 3rd or 4th round pick, great. Yes, by all means. Like, who cares about mid-round picks at this point? But like premium futures, your top prospects, 1st, 2nd round picks, you are not doing anything with those to solve a 1-year problem.
Stevie loves mid goalies, asks, what's the % chance of Steve getting rid of Tarasenko? Like everyone's talking about that. I'd put it at like 40% generously.
Yeah.
All right. That is all for the main show. We're going to jump into our Patreon exclusive overtime. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. Next episode is our NHL draft preview episode. It's one of our biggest of the year, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thank you to the sponsors of the show and to all of our patrons. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support us. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, subscribe, leave a rating or a review or a thumbs up, tell a friend about the show. All that really helps. To our name level sponsors on Patreon, we could not do this show without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Rain Dano, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Brad and Evans Thighs and Toes Podcast, Butts Carlton, Carl Brutinen Nanalewski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassam, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Kip Tira Jr., brand new name level supporter. Welcome, Kip. Mark Hernandez, Matt McKay, Matt Keeler, Marty, Mr. Kuzi. Now I have to learn how to click on a Macintosh. Podgy713, RA, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortlieb. That's what I appreciate about you. Wallman's Elite Dancing D. William, brand new name level supporter. Welcome, William, to the Dub Dub Club. Wings fan in Chicago, Eiserplan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, A.A. Ron, All Motor No Hands, and Stanislavski, Axolotl, Sardine Pelican, Bellingham Masterballs, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chris Flinsky, Clay Adams, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Evans, Smooth Marbles, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hall, Mitch Minier, Living Rent Free in Edmonton's Mind, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Marco Kasper, the Task Manager, Matt Keeler, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Peter Swanson, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, Wolverine on his bed holding a framed Wallman photo, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. See you for the draft preview.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.